Thank you all for joining us for our session today on Handshake, getting the most out of Handshake and learning a bit about the platform as well as how it can help you get a job and grow your career. So we're really excited to talk to you today. We'll do some brief intros first of both myself and Brett, so you know who you have speaking to you today. So my name is Amy Hendrickson. I am a relationship manager here at Handshake. And so basically what my role entails at Handshake is I work with our fabulous EDU partners. So at Handshake, we partner with a number of universities and colleges across the US, as well as some in the UK. And we basically help them power their career services office and bring Handshake to their student body so that students can use it to search for jobs, make connections, etc. For any students out there who relationship manager, the title itself, it's like I was not familiar with it till I started doing the job. At other tech companies, it's called customer success or customer success manager. So I always like to explain that to students as well, just so you can understand those different roles in tech. But yeah, excited to chat with you today. We're going to go through a little bit about what is Handshake and then actually show you a demo of the student side and give you some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of it. So excited to be here, and then I'll throw it over to Brett to do his intro.
Thanks so much, Amy. It's great to see you again, and I'm really happy you can join us. Amy is our relationship manager for City College of San Francisco. So we work with her, and she helps us kind of do the most with a Handshake platform as much as we can. And that means supporting students in creating their profiles or attending events or having one-on-one appointments with career services staff like myself. And again, my name is Brett Berning, and I'm an employment and training specialist at the career services office at City College of San Francisco. And I'm really excited to bring some of this information to you all today to kind of close out Teach for the Bay conference, the third annual. And again, I think a lot of this information will be really useful to tap into, because it's about how do you build up your profile, how do you stay competitive in the labor market, how do you find the right child development or teaching or education roles, jobs that are out there. And Amy and I will walk you through that. And so I'm excited that she's here to guide this process. And if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or add it in the chat. We'll have a portion at the end of the workshop also where you can do some Q&A. So that's me. Thanks again. And take it away, Amy.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much, Brett. And something I meant to say in my intro as well is, educators and teachers, very close to my heart. My husband is a middle school teacher. I live down in Southern California, so he teaches in Irvine. So definitely, I have never been a classroom teacher, but he, I feel like I lived through his experience a bit. So it's exciting to be in a room with several, future educators or folks that are interested in education. So excited to chat with you all today. So just a quick overview of our agenda. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but we're going to do first an intro of Handshake. What is Handshake? How do we maybe stack up to other job boards that you might be using? What's the difference? Why is it beneficial to you as a student to use Handshake? Then we're going to do a brief intro on just how to access Handshake. We know that we have a mixed group today. Not every student in this call might be from City College. And so want to make sure we talk about the various ways that you could access a Handshake account, whether or not your school partners formally with Handshake or not. And then we're going to explore the tool together a little bit. We're going to do a brief demo, talk about kind of the different areas and where I recommend you spend a lot of your time and energy when searching for jobs, internships, etc. And then if we have any, non-students or support staff, faculty staff, folks like that in the room, I have a brief section on kind of what you can do to help drive students to Handshake and if they have questions. So we'll definitely have time at the end for questions as well. So like Brett said, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them when we have a chance, or if it comes up in the presentation, we can address them there as well. Cool. All right, so quick intro on Handshake. So Handshake is the nation's #1 college to career network. We are really big in helping students, every student find a great job, no matter where they go to school, no matter the connections that they have or don't have, where they're from, who they are. We want you all to feel like you can have and find a fulfilling career, a fulfilling job using our platform. So that's really important to us. One of our main mission statements is students first. And so as a company, that's something we're consistently thinking about, is how can we make the job search experience better for students and help them navigate what can be a pretty stressful time in life, figuring out maybe one of those earlier first jobs that you have. So I always like to spend a little bit of time on this slide just to talk about the origin story of Handshake. So I think something that's really special about Handshake, it was started by students for students. So up in the top right-hand corner of my screen, these are actually our 3 founders, as well as our CEO, Garrett. They look a little bit older now, but this is when they first got Handshake up and running. They had just graduated from Michigan Tech. I don't know how familiar with Michigan Tech everyone on the call is. I know I was not super familiar with it until working at Handshake, but Michigan Tech is located up way at the top of Michigan, kind of out of the way from a lot of the state. And so that actually informed a big reason of why these 3 founders decided to start Handshake. They found that even though they were going to a well-established college, they were seeking technical degrees, they actually did not have as many opportunities come their way when they were looking for a full-time job. And a lot of that was just because Houghton, Michigan, where Michigan Tech was located, was really far out of the way. And so traditionally, when recruiters actually needed to physically visit a college campus in order to recruit students, they found that a lot of major companies were not making their way all the way up to the north of Michigan to recruit them. And that concerned them, right? They thought about the fact that they had so many talented peers that were potentially not having access to the same opportunities as other students going to larger schools or more established schools. And so they wanted to change that. And so thus Handshake was born shortly after them graduating, and the rest is history. Here we are today. So I really like this quote. It's something that we live by at Handshake. Handshake is that concept of talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. The old way of college recruiting, definitely focused on certain schools or certain areas, and that is not always the most equitable or fair thing to students who are really talented across the board at many different campuses and many different locations. So I think something to think about when you're thinking about, well, why should I use Handshake? What makes Handshake unique? Keeping in mind that employers come to Handshake specifically to recruit early career talent. And so when we say early career, what we're thinking is, college students looking for that first job, maybe that second job, or even folks that are restarting a career who maybe they have work experience, but now they're starting in a new industry. That is kind of the bread and butter of what Handshake is for and why so many employers decide to come recruit on Handshake. So just like to give that kind of quick overview and tell you our story there. So a little bit more about just Handshake itself and like how we are positioned in the marketplace of all of this, the craziness that is recruiting and talent. We live right in the middle of employers, students, and career services. The fact that we partner with so many campuses across the US really helps us kind of leverage all 3 sides of the marketplace in a really unique way, right? If you think about most job boards, it's just the employers posting a job and the students or the applicants applying for the jobs. There might not be a formalized place where your school or where career services lives. And with Handshake, they're a really critical component of how our whole system works, right? I think the fact that Brett and I are here presenting today is kind of a testament to that, right? We get to hear not just from what the employer experience and the student experience is, but we get to also hear from our career services and our EDU partners, what's going on their campus. How did COVID affect your campus? How are students responding to that? So it gives us a really interesting and informed way. And then thus that really influences how our product works and how we update it and change it to help students. So across the Handshake network as a whole, we have over 550,000 employers that use Handshake to recruit students, and we're partnered with over 1,400 schools. But even if you go to a school that does not formally partner with Handshake, that is totally fine. Any student with a .edu email address should be able to access Handshake in some way, shape, or form, even if their college doesn't partner with it. So I'll talk about that a little bit on the next screen about how to access Handshake. But at the end of the day, we just want you to understand Handshake is this really robust college to career platform that can help you specifically search for jobs. And I know today we have a lot of future educators in the audience. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that might look like when you're seeking, teaching positions in education, et cetera. So awesome. All right. So before we move on, I did want to share some exciting kind of current event news in relation to Handshake that, is really timely considering the group that we have today and the Teach for the Bay conference. So recently in August, our CEO, Garrett, he participated in a discussion led by Dr. Jill Biden at the White House on how different public and private sector companies and organizations can help address the school staffing shortage that we're seeing happening across the US. It's sweeping the nation. So I wanted to share this picture with you all because I think it's a really cool one. So right back here, if you see my cursor right by the fireplace, that's our CEO, Garrett. He looks a lot different than that previous picture I showed you, right? He's grown up a little bit there. And then he's sitting there at the table with the first lady, and he was with some other industry leaders talking about the school staffing shortage and how companies like Handshake can really help fill that gap. So this was not even something Brett and I knew when we started talking about this conference. So it's just really timely in terms of this presentation. And so because of the audience that we have today, I did also want to give you a kind of save the date reminder that Handshake is actually hosting our own virtual event for college students that are interested in breaking into K-12. And that's going to be on October 26th. So the time was still in flux when I was looking at it, so I didn't want to give you all the wrong time. But basically, if you go on Handshake, you search the Handshake employer and look for our event, you should see it on there. But basically, just save the date for October 26th, and we're going to have a really cool event for you to learn about different paths within education. And I'll talk about it near the end of our presentation as well. But we're really excited about this initiative and to kind of respond to that call to action from the White House. And I'm excited to see where that goes. So thanks for that. Before I move on to how to access Handshake, Brett, from the context and the story and how we've kind of talked about Handshake already, was there anything else you wanted to add there, maybe from your perspective of how your campus uses it or how it helps power the work that you do with students? Just
Sure.
I'd color there.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, so what's relevant for us at City College of San Francisco, and it might look different for others coming from high school or nonprofit or other community colleges across the Bay, is that we just launched in November of last fall. So we've just really not even come upon the first full year using it. And that means it can take time for students to understand what a new platform is before we're using something separate that was kind of outdated. So we're happy to have created something new in a partnership with Handshake that allows students and us to kind of bring in more employers to our network ultimately, right? Allow more opportunities to be more accessible to students, and kind of merge some of our same offerings of one-on-one appointments with students through the platform, being able to book appointments with me and see my schedule, attend events that we're creating specifically for students, all on this one platform. So it is still new to us, and we're asking students to create your profile and get in and take advantage of this, because we know that it's working across the country and other countries now too. So we want to support the growth opportunities here for students taking advantage of what's available, and because of their network and the specific nature of employers reaching college students, that this is the go-to platform for that. So at City College or other community colleges here on the call, go to your career services or career center team and ask them hey, I'd love to learn more. How do I do this? And oftentimes they're hosting workshops, and we're hosting workshops on Handshake too. So yeah, great opportunity, and I'll be able to kind of chime in some more once we get into some of the bulk of it there. Thanks, Amy.
Cool, thank you. And I did just see your message in the chat about the October 26th event. It is on the Handshake platform. I believe it's technically going to be powered through Zoom, just because we're expecting a large volume there, but you should be able to find the event, register for the event, and find the link to access on the Handshake platform as well. So good question there. All right, so not going to spend a ton of time here, but did just want to clarify how to access Handshake for folks in the room. So you've heard us talking about whether or not your school partners formally with Handshake or not. Basically, what that means is for some schools that formally partner with Handshake, they actually create student accounts for their students on the front end, and then students can log in using their school credentials. Like maybe you have a login that you use for your portal or to register for classes. Oftentimes schools will have it set up so that you can log in with that. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's just with your school ID or your school email address. But basically, for everyone on the call, whether or not you go to a Handshake partner school or not, you can start at app.joinhandshake.com. That's on the web, on your laptop if you're using that. We also do have a mobile app that you can download. If you just search Handshake in the Android or Apple app store, you should be able to find it there. And then when you log into Handshake, you'll be able to select your school from a drop-down menu. and then log in either with your school credentials or using your .edu email address. So even if your school does not formally partner with Handshake, you should be able to still create an account as long as you have a .edu email address that you can request that account with. If you have any issues or you come across trouble or you're not able to create an account, I definitely recommend you either reach out to your school's career center in case they do formally partner. They will be the best resource to troubleshoot for you, or contact Handshake support, which you should be able to find the button to contact support on Handshake's website as well. So wish we could help troubleshoot every single one today if anyone's having issues, but hopefully you don't have any issues logging in. But if not, there are folks at Handshake that can help you. We definitely want you to be able to access and use the platform. So feel free to try to log in, and then definitely recommend that you do that after today's call as well. Cool. All right, so we're going to spend a good chunk of time now to actually explore the platform a little bit together and just get a sense of what are the different areas that can really help you maximize your use of the platform and make sure you're getting the most out of, you know, everything it has to offer. So this page is just here kind of as a standalone to talk about the importance of filling out your profile as well as filling out your career interests. I think one of the really special things at Handshake and something that we're working on really carefully right now is making sure Handshake feels relevant to each individual student who uses it. And we know that what's relevant to one student might not feel relevant to the next student, even if they have the same major, right? You might have different interests, you might have different industries or regions that you want to live and work in. And so because of that, we're really committed to helping kind of translate your career interests into a really relevant experience for you on the platform. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is how you as the user can really ensure that that happens for you. So I'm going to take a moment here to pop out of our Google Slides for a second and actually pop into the Handshake product. So today I'm viewing as Brett. So even though Brett is a staff member, he does have a student account that he's able to access. And so we're going to be using that today. Keep in mind, we're viewing as Brett, and so it is associated and affiliated with City College of San Francisco because that's where he works and that's where his student account is. But the bare bones skeleton of what we see today on Brett's account should look very similar no matter where you go to school. So it doesn't make a huge difference if you're not a City College student. This should still be relevant for you as we go through the demo today. So
Amy, Tracy Burt, the organizer of Teach for the Bay conference, she's here. She just wants to make a quick little announcement if I can.
Of course. Hi, Tracy. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Hi, Amy and Brett. Thank you so much. I just really wanted to thank you for being here, for spending time with us today. And I want to thank all the students for being here. It's been a wonderful experience at the conference, seeing everybody. And please be sure to fill out the evaluation. And yeah, you can always reach out with any questions. So Amy and Brett, just thank you very much from our Teach for the Bay team. We really appreciate it. And this is such an amazing resource for students. It's just so much, it's really better than what we've used before. So I really appreciate it. I recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. Happy to be here and thanks so much. Sorry, I didn't see your message come through. So I'm glad you interrupted me there, Brett. Good timing.
Oh, no worries. It's all good.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So like I said, this leaves us like, this should look pretty similar to what the experience looks like for every student, but I always like to kind of give a couple of highlight areas of what I mean by this concept of relevancy, right? So when we, Brett obviously works with a lot of students going into education, going into public service. So you're going to notice as we're scrolling through Brett's profile, you're going to see a lot of the recommended employers, jobs, events, et cetera, are all kind of similar to these interests that Brett has put on his profile, right? We see today's Teach for the Bay presentation because he's registered for that with his student account. We're going to see some local opportunities in the San Francisco area for, mental health or maybe for recreation. So things related to public service. So those are what's being recommended to him. That might be totally different if you were looking at your friend's profile who was a computer science major or who was a history major, right? They might have totally different interests. But the system's not going to know that if you don't actually put in what you're interested in or let them know, hey, this is where I'm interested in being located. So if you don't get anything out of my presentation today, which I hope you get a lot out of it, but if you only get one thing, it would be fill out your profile and fill out your interests, and it's really going to help you maximize your use of the platform. So this page is really going to look different depending on the student and their interests. But let's talk about where do you actually go to update those interests and update that profile, right? That's an important place to start. So if we go up to the top right-hand corner, in many cases, that's where your profile picture will be, or maybe your initials will be there. And you can click on My Profile. And this is going to take you to your customized student profile that you're actually able to build from scratch to help showcase all of the wonderful work, volunteer, organization experience that you have while you're a student, or maybe even part-time jobs that you do in the summer. Basically, your chance to showcase the skills that you have. And employers that are using Handshake from the employer side will actually use these different variables and fields to do like searches for students if they want to maybe do outreach for a specific subset of students, right? I want to search for students who have a teaching credential, or I want to search for students who are interested in this industry or this employer. They're going to actually look at student profile data and do a search of that. And so you want to make sure you have it as up to date as possible so that you can potentially be scooped up in those searches for employers. So Brett already is an all-star, obviously, and has some stuff on his profile already. But if you're just getting started, there actually will be the ability for you to upload a resume. If you already have a resume or a CV or something that you use to apply for jobs, you can actually upload that resume to Handshake, and it'll help pre-fill out your profile so you don't have to repeat that work over and over again. So if you've already put the work in to create a resume, or you're in the process of doing that, I would just add like a next to do for you to be, let's put that resume on Handshake so it can compile my profile and I can clean it up a bit and also save a bit of time in doing that. So that's my biggest recommendation there. You'll see that there's a lot of different fields, you know, not just, hey, what is your paid work experience or internship experience, but we also say, what is your volunteer experience? You know, maybe not everyone has had a full-time job before, and that's totally fine, right? We all get skills and experiences from various things. And so I want you to feel like empowered to fill this out, even if you've never had a job before, or even if you've only had a part-time job before. This is all still relevant to what makes you you and kind of who you are today and where you're headed. So you'll see we also have a section for organizations and extracurriculars, courses, projects, so lots of different things. I see a great question from Cynthia. Are these jobs careers for all over the United States? Correct. So you're going to see jobs in Handshake, not just for California, not just for the Bay Area. You will see a lot for the Bay Area in California. We have a lot of employers there, but it is a nationwide platform. So you'll see jobs from across the US. Depending on your school, you might also see international positions as well. So we do have international employers that use Handshake as well. So yeah, great question there. So basic profile information, definitely recommend you take some time to fill that out. But the part that I really want to focus on today is this your interests section. So I know I've talked a lot about this concept of career interests and telling the system, what are you interested in, so that it can work harder and smarter for you, right? So this is one of the places that you can fill out those career interests. So if we click on this little pencil icon here, you'll see a couple of different options that you can go for. You can say, I am not looking for a job right now. You can say, I'm actively looking for a job. You know, let us know, are you in the process right now? Or you maybe it's a little bit too early and you're just browsing, right? You can let us know that. You can say, what type of job are you interested in? Are you looking for an internship? Maybe you're looking for a part-time job. Maybe you're ready for that full-time job. Maybe you're looking for all of them. You're curious about them all. It's not going to limit or restrict what you see, but it's more getting a better sense of where are you at in the process. Cities, very, very important. So even if you're going onto Handshake from your specific college, the system's not going to automatically assume that you want to stay around where your college is, right? I think if COVID taught us anything, many people are interested in moving, they're interested in working remotely. They might be open to moving to a different state when in the past they would be more locally bound. So we don't make any assumptions off of you based on where your school is. And so I would really recommend, if you have specific locations that you're looking for, adding a couple of city preferences here will definitely help make sure your recommendations feel a little bit more relevant for you. And then we have roles that you can put down. So there's a huge list of job roles, pretty much anything that you can think of: teacher, social worker, mental health specialist, you know, the list can go on, and Brett has some great ones here as examples that he's listed. But put any sort of roles that you think sound remotely interesting to you. Once again, it's not committing yourself to anything, but it's just letting the system know this is information. These are the types of positions that I'm interested in, so that it can really think smarter and harder for you, so that you're not just sitting there scrolling through thousands of jobs, that it's actually recommending things that you're interested in. And then also, when employers are doing a search of students interested in mental health or students interested in being a community health worker, you're going to be more likely to come up in those searches that they do for students. So this is just an example of where you can go to do those career interests. It can live on the profile. Oh, there we go. Pretend that didn't happen. So the other place that you can find it is here under my career interests. So I know we lived on the profile right now, but my career interest is a good place to look at all of these as a whole. So for many students, you might remember this if anyone has logged into Handshake before. The first time you log in, you're actually prompted to do a lot of these questions during our onboarding process. And I know from my experience working with students, sometimes you rush through them or you don't have time to fill them out completely, and you might forget what you put on there. So if you ever want to remember kind of what you put as your interest, you can go here under my career interests and fill those out, or just maybe refresh them every couple months to make sure that they still reflect what you're truly interested in, right? So that's just another place that you can go for there. Cool. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to throw it over to Brett just to see if you have anything from your experience that you want to share in terms of profile, career interests, etc. And then we'll go over to the jobs page in a couple of minutes, but I'll give you some time there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Amy. This is so great. I think, I naturally think about other job boards that I've seen or used or kind of consulted with students, and how this one is like really nicely organized, and it makes it really simple to kind of see in this perspective, like the industries that I'm kind of curious about. Now, if you don't know what you're open to and you just like kind of want to click as many as you would like, that might be an okay thing to do, just to get a sense of like what's out there and like kind of cast a wide net, right? So for me, what I'm consulting with students and talking about kind of where you'd like to go, try not to always limit yourself just to one specific industry or category, especially if you think that your skills are translatable to something different, right? Within, if you've done retail or if you worked at a restaurant, like that's really translatable to so many different areas. So select those categories of like retail stores or food and other things, but also kind of go broad as well. And I think mostly why that's critical to choosing more than just one or two different industries is because you want to see what the platform has all together, and utilize the recommendations feature. So like when you go back to your main page, you can see like, oh, these are jobs recommended to you based on your preferences and your career interests. So and then just to see kind of play around more and more, so you're not just getting one area only. But once, of course, you do type in your job titles that you like really are focused on, that's the day-to-day kind of what I would say is like go into your Handshake every day to look what's there, connect with employers, and we'll talk about that next. But yeah, just as much as you can utilize it, all the areas, and kind of try to keep an open mind to what it can do for you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And that really leads really well into our next portion of really looking at these three tabs up here, the jobs, events, and employers tab. So obviously I've been harping on these career interests quite a lot, but there's also a couple other key ways that the system learns what you're most interested in. One is, what employers do you either follow or have you clicked on their profiles before? So for example, say you want to work for San Francisco Unified School District, you can actually search for San Francisco Unified on Handshake. You can see, do they have a Handshake account? Are they actively posting jobs? Is my school connected with them? And you can click on their profile to learn a little bit more about their, company. I know in this case, it's not a company, it's a district, but to learn more about this employer. And there's a couple different things that you can do on this page, right? One of them is actually following the employer. So kind of creating your own curated list of employers that you're watching. That's a really powerful action that you can take as a student in the platform. And the platform is going to go, okay, they're serious about this employer. Like, let's make sure we send them recommendations or notify them when a new job is posted, or if this employer is hosting an event in the future, we want to make sure the student knows because they're letting us know that they're interested in. So following the employer can be a really powerful way to kind of indicate your interest. You'll also see on this page, if an employer has indicated that they're actually open to actively networking or talking to students, you will see the ability to actually click and explore jobs specifically that have a recruiter or a hiring manager attached to that job. So this is a great example, right? This is an AmeriCorps position at San Francisco Unified School District. This actually took us over to our jobs tab, which is perfect. That's where I was going to take you all next. And so we'll just take a moment here to look over like what a traditional job description would look like for a student on Handshake. This one in particular does not have an employer that can network with you, but you'll look here and there's a, if we look at another one, I don't know why that one wasn't showing up for this one. Okay, this is a better example. If we see this here, it means that the person who posted the job or a contact associated with the job actually said, yes, if a student wants to message me and ask me questions about this job, I'm open to it. My inbox is open. And you can actually send a message to Maurice, who's I'm assuming is the principal of this school, and they're actively looking for folks who want to engage in a conversation about the position. So it's a way for you to not only just read the job description, apply, but even potentially make a connection with the person who would be making that hiring decision. So you're not always going to see this on every single job description or every single job post, but we're definitely seeing an increase of employers that are open to that type of messaging or open to that type of correspondence with students and candidates beforehand. So you probably saw me go up here to the all filters, but you'll actually see that there is a filter that is employer is open to messaging, meaning that if you only want to apply for jobs where you're going to be able to message the employer beforehand, you can actually filter by that and search by that, just because that might be something that's really important to you, or you just want to be able to shoot a message over to really help yourself stand out in the application process. That's one way that you can do it as well.
Amy, can you show us what it looks like when you press send a message?
Yes, I can. So we're going to click send a message, and that's going to pop up a box. It initially gives you some suggestion, right? Because this person might have posted 10 jobs on Handshake, right? So you want to make it easier for them to know exactly what you're asking them about. So it'll pre-populate a bit of information here. You can delete that and write your own message if you want. And then that will go to, I'm not going to actually send this because keep in mind, this is actually a student account. So if I put something silly here, it'll look like it comes from Brett. But this is where you would be able to pop it up. And then it would actually be, the correspondence itself would be here in your inbox in Handshake. So the messaging feature within Handshake there. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. And remind us, when students are sending messages through Handshake and it goes to their inbox there, does it also get linked to their student email account?
Yes, I believe the default is that it does, but students have the ability to either turn on and off those notifications. So if they only want the message to be in their inbox on Handshake, that's usually an option for most cases. And then if you want to be able to get it as an email, maybe you check your email more often than Handshake, you could definitely have that pushed along as well. That's a good question. That's a good question. If we have time at the end, I might show the kind of settings and notification feature as well, because we didn't go over that too. So one thing I like to clarify for folks too, when we're looking at an actual job. So keep in mind, we clicked on teacher bilingual Arabic, and then we're looking at the job here. On Handshake, you may see a couple of different buttons that pop up here when you're actually going to apply for the job. So this one says apply externally, which basically means when you click on this, it's going to ask you to attach your resume just because they want to collect that information. But then step 2 is an external application, meaning that it's actually going to take you outside of Handshake to finish the application process. And so that's pretty common with some of the bigger employers, right? They might have a larger system that they use or something more centralized within their office that they want to actually collect the ultimate job application. And so just be really careful when you're applying to things that if it does require an external application, that you are finishing the process by applying externally, that you're not just finishing it in Handshake and not following through, because that could actually result, unfortunately, in your application not being received if you don't do it in that external system. But you're not going to see apply externally for every job or every employer. It really depends on the employer and how they're processing. For some, you may see something called a quick apply, which will mean it'll just like quickly attach the resume that you have associated with your Handshake account. You'll see others that say apply on Handshake, which means you'll click on it and there might be a set of questions here, or maybe it'll ask for resume, cover letter, and another document. But then instead of this step 2, it'll be like submit, and you'll actually be submitting it there on Handshake, meaning that the employer is processing it on Handshake. So you're going to see a mix of all of those 3 things when you're applying to Handshake jobs. But I just wanted to clarify that, especially with the apply externally, you really want to make sure you follow the directions on the external site as well, just to make sure you're not falling through the cracks anywhere and that your application is actually being received by the employer. So cool. So a couple other things, I'm going to go ahead and just click on the jobs tab to refresh it so all of our filters are gone. But a couple things that I always like to go over with students when we're looking at searching for jobs on Handshake. For context, I don't think I shared this with you all, but prior to my life at Handshake, I worked in a job very similar to what Brett does. So working with students, coaching them, helping them navigate the job search process. And something that always surprised me is a lot of the time students would go on this page and they would just scroll. And obviously in a perfect world, the first 20, 30 jobs that you see should be hyper relevant to you based on the activity that you've done in Handshake, based on your career interests. But we have 9,000 jobs here listed in this system. I don't think we're going to spend hours and hours scrolling through all 9,000 of these jobs, right? Especially if we know a little bit more about what we're interested in. So what I'm going to challenge all of you to do is really think strategically about how you can use different filters on Handshake to help you get what you want or help you see the jobs that you're most interested in, right? So a couple of key ones that I always like to focus on with students. One is location. I feel like 9 times out of 10, students have at least a general sense of where they maybe want to be or where they're at least trying to start their job application focus. And so let's say, you know, Bay Area, but you're open to most of the Bay Area, right? We could put San Francisco and it's going to default to 50-mile radius. That's still like a pretty big chunk of land, right, that you could be searching for. But from doing that, we cut our jobs from 9,000 to 2,000, right? That's still a lot. I don't think we're going to want to still scroll through 2,000 jobs there. I think we're going to want to use more filters, but that is just one of the first key filters that I always ask students to think about, because you normally have a sense of where you want to be, or at least where you want to start that search, right? From there, there's a lot of different things you could do. We could go up to all filters again. We talked about how, you know, maybe for this group, let's say you're looking for that first full-time job. So maybe we select that full-time job filter. That's going to filter out any part-time positions. That's going to filter out any internships positions. And then we can go up to all filters and look for a couple of other things, right? We talked about the employer is open to messaging. So if we really want to focus on employers that want to message students or want to get that inbound message, we can click on that. Maybe there's a specific job role you're looking for, right? So like I said, I know we have a lot of teachers or future educators here. So let's do a search specifically for high school teachers, okay, and show results. Now my list is only showing me full-time jobs in the Bay Area for high school teachers, right? A lot more niche, a lot more specific. From there, you might want to take some time to actually click through the jobs, look at them, read the job descriptions, but at least you're doing it on a much more narrow focus rather than feeling like you have to scroll through thousands and thousands, right? And then once you do come across jobs, maybe you don't have the time to read all of them, right? You can do a couple of things. You can actually save your search. So if you want to be able to come back to this exact page a week later and not have to do all the filters, you just want it to default to that, you can save a search for yourself. You can also save a job for yourself, right? So you can say, hey, I want to come back and look at this later. And now those jobs are going to show up under your saved jobs. You can easily find them again in the future when you have time to apply or time to read them. And very similar to the employer, how I told you could follow an employer. When you save a job, the system really does see that as a very critical action that says, oh, we think this person's interested in this job. So it might start to recommend jobs similar to that to you in the future. So I see a couple of questions that come through. Is there any filter on this site to filter jobs that have retirement or plan and all benefits, like if I work for government? Sorry, I skipped a couple words there when I was reading it. That's a good question, Mona. I don't think, let's look at the filters just to remind myself. I don't think we have a specific filter for that purpose, but yeah, it doesn't look like we have a specific filter for that purpose, but this search field, this keyword search field will actually search the entire job description. So in many cases, if you're looking for like a specific benefit or a specific something like that, you could search, and if it shows up in the job description and they mention it in the job description, which in many cases they do mention benefits, retirement, things like that, it would actually come up. So not a perfect answer for you there, but there are some ways that you could kind of game the search box to get a little bit more narrow of a focus there. Yeah. Hopefully that helps there too. I'll pause there, Brett, too, to see if you want to chime in with anything in terms of the job search or maybe anything you want me to focus on more. You know, we're getting close on time, so I want to be
Sure.
that too.
No, hopefully this is information that's, receiving well for everyone, because it appears to be a lot, right? I think in general, it's like getting to know a new system or a platform like this, where if you've had comfort or familiarity with other job boards, this is kind of unique, right? It's maybe similar to Glassdoor or LinkedIn or something else that you may have seen, but again, it's something kind of automated for you, right? So I think what I would recommend is, when I'm speaking to students, much like what Amy just mentioned, is save these searches so that way you can come back to really easily the next day and see it at the top of your page, right? Because that'll save you time when you like, oh, I can't apply for it right now, but I can maybe in a couple of days when I have some space and time on my schedule. And then again, I'm at your disposal. Other career services staff or those that are across different community colleges or high schools, like go to your career center, ask for the help if you need to apply to these jobs. And in respect to the question from Mona about like certain organizations or companies that offer retirement, that's where digging in a bit deeper, going to the external site, reviewing the job description on whole or their webpage, it will give you some of that information. So that is also part of the job search strategy, is like using a platform like Handshake, becoming really familiar with it, kind of having a full profile, engaging with some of the features, and as well as looking at that company. So you're doing the research so you're informed about, is this the path I want to take? And myself and others at our team can help you with that in one-on-one or in group settings in a workshop. And yeah, so kind of it will work for you if you do, if you act with it. And I think there's some data even that, Amy or the team at Handshake can talk about, is like students are 5 times more likely to get a job if they're using, certain elements of the platform. So yeah, take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the stat is 5 times more likely to receive an employer message if they have their profile and career interests filled out, right? Which is huge because, I know for me, when I was searching for jobs right after undergrad, I wasn't getting outreach from employers. I was the one reaching out to employers and begging them, please, I waited to the last minute and now I don't know what I'm doing. So that confidence that can come from actually getting a custom message from an employer that says, hey, we want you to apply to this position, or hey, we have this recruiting event that's happening virtually, we would love for you to attend to learn more about our district or to learn more about our organization. Here's the link to register and apply. I know sometimes students can get those and they can think, oh, this is a robot, or I don't know if this is a real person. They're real people. They're recruiters doing the job of actually trying to narrow in, hey, let's not just send this to all students, but let's send this to specific students who the message and the job and the position is going to resonate with. So that would be my other piece of advice, is if you do get outreach from employers, don't be afraid to respond. Like, even if you're not in the place to apply right then and there, you could say, thank you so much for sending me this. I'm going to check it out, or I'll check back in with you next year when I'm applying, things like that. Those little kind of motions that you can make really help you stand out in the process. And you think about it, not everyone does that. Not everyone responds to those messages. So if you can be the person who does respond, it might really be favorable to you as well. And then going back to Mona's question, I do think that concept of asking about, benefits, retirement, like what do they have to offer you as someone applying for the position? That's also where I'll kind of plug the events on Handshake. So you'll see kind of two things. So because we're looking at the City College instance, this page defaults to events that are being hosted specifically by Career Services or specifically by City College, but we can also uncheck this only posted by my school. And you're going to also see well, maybe not at City College. I don't know if you all approve external events. Okay, you have a couple. So for example, you might have like job fairs happening in other states, which I know seems weird, but oftentimes they're virtual events, or they're a virtual job fair, or a specific employer is doing a virtual event, a virtual panel, kind of similar to the Handshake one that I talked to you all about, where they're inviting students from all across the network, from all sorts of schools, to learn about a specific job or to learn about their early campus recruiting programs. So especially for those of you that might be earlier in the process and maybe some of this feels overwhelming, like it's just information overload, I would really encourage you, like, go to events, even if it's, I don't have to tell you all, you're at events right now. I think you're the perfect candidates for this message, but you can learn so much just from hearing folks talk about what they have to offer. And then if you're actually talking to a recruiter, you're talking to a hiring manager when they're doing their presentation, you could ask them questions about benefits, or you could ask them questions about what is something that you're not seeing on the job description that you'd like to get a little bit more insight from someone on the inside. So that events tab, just to clarify, it's not just for on-campus events like workshops and resumes, which are all great, but they also are where the employer events will live if an employer is hosting a specific recruiting event for students, or an information event to just kind of teach students about their organization, things like that. So cool. All right, I think that's all I had in terms of the jobs tab, Brett, unless there was anything that I might totally be missing, which I know there's like a million things that I could show, but
we could talk again and again. The last thing I want to say, and maybe this is like one of my final comments too, before we transition, is there are, Handshake is powering career services teams at all these 1,400 plus institutions across the country, including all the major community colleges and universities across the Bay Area. So when you're using the platform, know that there's going to be natural competition from other students. So taking advantage of these suggestions that we're kind of providing will give you that standout opportunity, right? So like other students may wait until the end of their time getting their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree or something to pursue these kinds of opportunities. But if the more you do it now, the more you will stand out, right? So I think it is about building your social network, your professional network, your peer-to-peer messaging. That can happen also. There's just a ton of stuff that, once you start to play with the platform itself, you can really take advantage of a lot. And this will go with you, this travels with you when you move on to the next institution, or if you're, going to a California State University system or University of California system. So know that it's not just like a one time and that's it. This can grow with you as you continue your education.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of four-year institutions, not just in California, but across the US, use Handshake as well. So if you are a student that's looking to transfer, or you think you'll end up at a four-year, you're kind of building that muscle now. If you get familiar and comfortable with the platform, you can continue to use it when you're at that next institution too. So that's a great point. So, all right. So I think we had a couple other slides that I'll just like quickly go through. If I can find my cursor, there we go. And then we'll close out, and if anyone has questions, we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. So just a quick slide on how faculty and staff can help. I have no idea why it just appeared backwards like that. I don't remember doing that, but I think long story short, for faculty and staff, just being aware that Handshake is a resource that exists is really huge, right? If students come to you and say, hey, where can I start my job search? having Handshake be on the list of resources that you share with students, I would definitely recommend having it there, especially because a lot of folks who are in staff, faculty, or leadership positions, Handshake didn't exist when we were in, school. So it's just not something we're as familiar with. So I think just building that awareness, you don't have to be a pro or an expert on it, but just know that it's one of many resources for students. And then I think really hitting home that point that we've, I think, probably hit home a lot today of filling out those preferences, telling the system what you're interested in. That's really going to help you maximize your use of the platform and increase the likelihood that you are being reached out to by employers. So that's kind of the long story short there for faculty and staff. And depending on where you work and if your campus does partner with Handshake, you may be able to work with career services as well on initiatives that they're working on, whether that's like workforce development initiatives or even just getting in the platform and being more familiar with the content that's on there. So really happy and, huge advocate for faculty and staff champions. I think you have a lot of ability to drive engagement for students and help them understand all the resources that they have available to them. So just some final thoughts before we break for Q&A and, end our Fridays. Just a couple of tips from me that I see, students that have a lot of success on Handshake often are students who set their profile visibility to community, which basically means you can do everything in the platform. You can message employers, you can receive messages from employers, you can message students at other schools if you want to ask them about their experiences, you can apply for jobs, all of that good stuff. There is a more private visibility option if you're not comfortable being on the community visibility. And when you apply for a job, you'll always be able to message with that employer. But the biggest difference is if you don't have the community setting, you won't be able to get those inbound messages from employers. So just keep that in mind. If you have a resume, don't be afraid to upload that resume and build your profile from it. It can be a quick and easy way to populate that page really quickly. Job roles, location interests, and putting skills on your profile. Those are going to be three of the most critical fields to make sure employers are searching for you and that you're being scooped up in some of those searches for employers. Handshake mobile app, great place for you to do it on the fly. If you don't have a laptop or you don't want to have to lug your laptop around, the mobile app is great, has a really good interface for students, and you can actually attend career fairs, you can attend virtual events on the app, you can really do everything that you can do on the laptop version on your mobile app. So recommend you download that one. And then, like I said, attending employer events and career fairs, that would be my number one piece of feedback and advice is don't be afraid to go to events that are put on by employers. They're going to be like really beneficial just to get an inside scoop of what might be going on at different companies or districts or employers. So those are my quick tips for you there. And then just save the date for that October 26th event. I think I had a picture that was here, but it looks like it got deleted. So sorry about that. But basically this event is just going to be a panel of different practitioners across different education functions and jobs, and really just helping students understand different pipelines and pathways into a career in education. So I really think perfect for this group here. So if you go on Handshake and search for our, basically search for the Handshake employer account on Handshake, you should be able to find that event as well. And then once I have the direct link, I'm happy to send that to Brett as well. And if the Teach for the Bay team wants to send that out to students, we can have you do that as well. But I just didn't have the final link quite yet, unfortunately. So cool. I'll stop sharing for a second. We can do some Q&A if we want, or Brett, if you have anything that I forgot to chime in there, feel free.
Mona, you got a question?
Yeah, may I have Ami's email address or any contact information? If you put it on the chat, I will appreciate it.
Sure, I'm happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn, so I can send my LinkedIn over. That would probably be the best way to keep in touch if that's okay. I'll put that in there.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I could ask the group, like, when's the last time you applied to a job? Today, yesterday, this week, last week? Anyone?
Or never, that's okay too.
Michael said last week or a couple weeks ago. Great, okay. And haven't heard back yet. All right. So yeah, that's another question is like, what do you do if you haven't heard back, or did the employer talk about what the next steps were? And have you sent your thank you email or letter? It's a lot, right? For searching for jobs and looking for work and using one platform versus another, like all the other job boards that exist. It's a matter of like keeping at it. And if you are in a place to really find the job that you want or deserve, and reach, making sure that your name stays up there at the top of the list.
Excuse me. Can you send a certificate for attending workshop?
I will send an email afterward, and I can provide that to anyone who needs it, along with the evaluation from today's workshop.
May I have a question?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if I should ask it from you or someone else, but by any chance, did you know how can I be a teacher in the United States? I have a master's degree on computer from Iran, and I wonder if they accept my certification and degree in the United States or not, and what's the step to being a teacher in the United States in the middle school or in the elementary school, whatever. I just want to know that is there any chance for me, and what is the step to being a teacher in the United States? And I am a student in City College. I study child development, and but because I think I should take it if I want to be an elementary teacher, but my strong point is mathematics and digital art, because for 6 years I study lots of maths and lots of high tech.
Thank you, Mona, and I appreciate the questions and the engagement today at the conference. So if you're City College San Francisco student, so if you haven't already, speak to one of our advisors in the department, and I think they would be the best individual to kind of provide that information, whether some of the education you currently have from your home country of Iran, or obtaining some more certificates or degrees here at City College would be that right path for you to teaching in the level you prefer. So yeah, that can be found at cdev@ccsf.edu. I'm sure you have connected with them already, but that's the Child Development Department main email, and you can ask them directly in the steps that it would take to kind of move in that direction of obtaining your teaching credential here in the United States.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I did consult to them, but they just know about child development process. They said they accept my certification